the USA.
Hello, welcome to the Story Studio podcast. Hello. I'm curious whether it's taken a new turn for anybody who's been listening in terms of like, wow, these guys sound like they're kind of getting in the flow, or like nobody's actually listening and people are like, well, I don't know what happened with them. They totally suck, and I don't know why they think they're cooler. I don't know. Do you have a vibe on these last few? Has it felt better to you, Dave?
Well, I think Dave's the real litmus here. I mean, Dave, do you feel, and this isn't even a joke.
Wouldn't it be cool if instead of litmus strips, they sold Dave strips? And you test things with them?
I think it would be like, you know what, there should be a Dave app where you use like the light on your phone, or like, you know, you get QR codes or something. Basically,
Siri's listening to you anyway, so why not just use that?
So you could just say, Siri, what does Dave think? And then like whatever situation you're in, it would give you Dave's interpretation of the situation.
Dave thinks you're going to die.
Well, no, it's not just about death and destruction. You would know if you were parking right. You would know if you were loading the dishwasher right. You would know like where you stood in your marriage at all times, which is important.
My wife can't even leave the house right.
Well, see.
Okay, hold on. Pause.
If she had
hear that story. Hold on, she can't leave the house, right? I'm going to need a little bit more.
There's something specific behind that, clearly.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so our garage door.
I like that you embraced this being both shows at once.
It must be okay.
It's week 3.
Our garage door. There's something wrong with it, so it won't click. It's not the battery. It won't click close from outside, so you actually have to go inside, close the garage door, and go back outside and get in the car. However, if it's just my wife leaving, or if it's just me leaving, one of us or my son will just sit inside and hold the door and wave goodbye. So when I go to leave, I leave correctly. I get in the car. I back.
Wait. Let's just. So when you leave correctly.
Of course, because I'm a thoughtful, considerate person.
Making
and
sure.
Normally my wife is, but in this situation, I don't know what's happening.
Does she know that she is completely?
And actually, I'm not thoughtful or considerate. Now that I think about it, but I am for stuff that I think might bother other people. So when I back out, like I don't want her sitting there waiting for me, so I just back out, and then I put on the seatbelt, adjust the seat, turn on the radio, do all that stuff. She will sit there, adjusting the mirror, adjusting the seat, turning on the radio, getting her drink just right.
Wait, like getting comfortable before she leaves?
Before she even backs out. So I have to sit there for 5 minutes.
That is just unconscionable.
It's horrible. And I should remind her of this on Mother's Day.
That's a pretty good idea. That's solid, Dave.
You know my mother wouldn't do that. That would go well.
You should get a t-shirt that says my mother wouldn't do that.
Wow. But Sean's mother would. Zing. Okay, so before we get into something cool, I want to mention 2 quick things pertaining to the show in general. So since we're now apparently professional enough to have a live show and remind people about it, which I'm going to take 0 credit for, you know, Neve's like, I'll set up a reminder. So you can get reminders for live shows if you want. They're just emails. So you can go to sterlingandstone.net/live show. And we are doing live most Fridays, almost every Friday at 2 o'clock Central Time, which I guess is 3 Eastern Time. And I guess that's it. So I guess that was only one thing. But anyway, so something cool? Anything?
Yeah, I got something cool. So I started a show last Friday that I finished on Saturday. And I recommend to everybody listening to this because it's really awesome. So it's not like the best show on TV ever or anything like that, but it's really entertaining. It's really well written. It moves really fast.
It's all over my idea.
Yes, it is. It is a show that Dave and I like no shit at all. We literally, the last thing we finished together has pretty much the same plot or the same hook as this story. Like dead on, which kind of sucked.
The last thing you finished writing, you mean?
Yeah. It's not.
That's out Dave. He's tapped into the zeitgeist.
Maybe
this has happened so many times to me. I'm fucking thinking that there is a chip in my head.
Well, it's your like Alexa.
What's funny about this is this story won't come out until I think December. And no, that's not true. It's this summer. But regardless, it's a short story-ish. It's a novella, and it's kind of come out a few months after this show, and it's going to look like we ripped them off. But we wrote this. It's done. It's already back from the editor. But anyway, the show itself is called Dead to Me, and it just zips along. It's 10 30-minute episodes. It's really twisty. There's a lot of great it's not obnoxious on the twists but there are twists every episode, and they're good. Like, they move the story along. A lot of them are character based. They're not just there to like,
they've surprised me. They've surprised me a few times. So there've been a few episodes because I'm like 4 or 5 in, and I'm like, oh, didn't see that coming.
Yeah, it moves.
I've watched 4 of them, and I saw every one of them coming, but I still liked it.
I have seen all the twists coming, but I think that they're really well done, and I enjoy them, and I enjoy my wife.
I feel bad for you guys being unable to divorce yourself from it. I go into some stupid headspace where I should see them coming as an author, but it's just like I'm too dumb when I'm watching.
That happens. I turn it off all the time. That happens to me all the time, but this one is different because of its structure. It really is like 30 minutes, and the twists are in kind of the same places.
Yeah, no, it's fooled me every time. I turn that off.
No, actually, I can think of a couple that have fooled me. Did you see the balloon one yet?
I did.
That one was awesome and caught me off guard. And I knew something. It didn't surprise me that it was a subversion of expectations, but I didn't know it would be that way. Anyway,
I did like that. I thought they would go with the one I thought they would do.
Yeah. So I really like the Christina Applegate. I've never seen her better. Linda Cardellini, who was Lindsay Weir in Freaks and Geeks and doesn't get to shine that often, was awesome. She's never been better either. James Marsden, who is kind of like wasted as Teddy on Westworld, just is much better here. It's a really, really fun show. It moves really fast. And if you like that kind of thing, you'll really enjoy it.
I actually started watching that. My wife likes to watch funny sitcoms, but she won't rewatch stuff like you guys watch Friends 8,000 times. So I showed her the IT Crowd, and we burned through that like the past couple months. Like I actually will watch TV with my wife.
What?
I know. It's shocking.
But not without the muzzle, right?
No, she actually doesn't talk during the shows.
Oh, good girl. Do you
imagine Dave just sitting there with a cattle prod, and every once in a while I just like looks over and.
No, I think it's more that she's just not into the same shows as she used to be, and that I am and was. So we just have different. Now, she doesn't want to be reminded of how much the world sucks, I guess, anymore. She likes to like.
Well, to be fair, you really like to be reminded of how much that sucks.
It's like that glowing in neon, dude.
No,
like her sense of it's probably your normal, just like eh.
Well, for me, it's like, well, at least our life doesn't suck that much. Like for me, it's cathartic and it helps me feel better. So we watch the IT Crowd, which she enjoyed, and I was glad for that. And then she's like, she wanted to do another comedy, and I keep trying to steer her towards something else. But I tried to get her to watch Stranger Things. She watched like one episode. So I said, okay, well, there's this new show called Dead to Me, and it's billed as a comedy. Let's watch that.
Wait a minute. What made you think it was a comedy?
Because like the reviews said it was funny.
It's like a dark comedy. There are parts.
There are comedic moments for sure. It is a dark comedy. I would say,
but it's really depressing us too. I'm just a little oh man.
I would not. Just everyone. This doesn't spoil anything. You can see it on the trailer. It's about a woman's dead husband who is violently
he dies violently.
Yeah, he dies violently, which you find out.
It's all about the grief, and it's just like it's so heavy. There's so many moments.
There's like a scene where she's crying for like a full 2 minutes or something, and
yeah,
it's
why?
It's funny, right?
Did you watch the trailer before you build it?
No, I like to go in blind.
But you said it was a comedy. What made you think it was a comedy? Because Christina Applegate was in it?
In one of the Apple News stories, it said new comedy with Christina Applegate. And I mean, they did say it had lots of
twists. There was no qualifier. There was nothing. There was a word before comedy, like maybe not.
I don't fucking know. You know these stupid ass sites.
So I tried to find something that wasn't a TV show because we do that a lot. So I am much to Sean's pleasure, I imagine. I'm going to mention the Brave New Weed podcast, which I've been listening to. Really enjoying learning about cannabis. I'm telling you, it really is very interesting. It suits my meticulous nature. I'm like, oh, it's just like wine, except it's still illegal in Texas. Fuckers.
Are you gonna start subscribing to High Times and masturbate to the centerfold?
I am not, but I could consider that if you'd like.
Well, I'm actually curious. So, Johnny, if you're looking for a weed podcast, have you checked out Chips?
I didn't even think of Chips. It was something where, and that seems really, really obvious in retrospect. Isn't his more industry focused though, like for growers?
No, he's got two. He's got one called Seed Money, which is about the business of cannabis.
Right.
And then he's got another one called The Real Dirt. And it's just talking to people who have weed stories.
I knew all of this. I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Chip, dude. It'd be like
I know. Okay, well, I'll add it to my queue because I'm zipping through them kind of quick. Because my nature is when I get interested in something, I consume. Like I've been really anything I can read or whatever. I want to understand all of this.
Oh, I know what project of ours you want back now.
Maybe I do want that back. It's just fascinating because I know like probably a lot of people like, you think, well, weed, that's about getting high, which it is. But then there's like,
there's so much more.
People mention medical marijuana, and then they start talking about, well, you can use hemp to make ropes and stuff, man. I'm like, come on, you motherfuckers. You just want it legalized so you can get high. And then the more I was researching, I was like, oh, okay, there's like significant benefit here. There's significant depth here.
It's a miracle plant, damn it.
So anyway, that's my recommendation, Brave New Weed. But I should be listening to Seed Money and The Real Dirt, which I will start immediately. I can't believe I missed
to either of those, and there's really good episodes. Tell me, like, I don't want to listen to the whole thing, but I love Chip. I'd love to listen to anything that was awesome.
Yeah, and it suits my background too because it's like chemistry and stuff. Like, ooh, there's other compounds, and here's how they change from one to another. So anyway, that was really cool. So let's move into
just so everybody knows. Weed with Johnny is a little nerdier than it's supposed to be. Like it just is.
Well, because, and honestly, that's why I wanted to research and why I'm interested in stuff like this podcast, because things like dosing. So like even like CBD is legal in all 50 states. That's the non-psychoactive, maybe the larger component of cannabis. So it's THC is the psychoactive one and CBD is the non-psychoactive one. And then there's others. And like, what dose should you take? Nobody can answer that fucking question. They're like, well, how are you consuming it? What have you eaten? How much do you weigh? What is your tolerance like? So like when Sean says it's nerdier, it's because I want to quantify. I want to be like, how much, in what circumstances, only in legal states, of course.
But
how much can I?
Most people are just like, do you want to smoke? Okay.
because you would want a repeatable experience. If you have inflammation and CBD is helping the inflammation, then what's the dose you should take? Like nobody just says, well, I'll just keep taking Excedrin until
I have a serious suggestion. Let's have Chip on. Like we're just talking to friends on our show now anyway. Let's talk to Chip. He'd be a great guest. He'd be a lot of fun. And there are things that like
he's got a lot of stories.
A lot of stories. Yeah, a lot of stories. And I think some of them are relevant. Like what are the things that most writers get wrong about weed? He's probably got like 84 of them, right?
There you go.
He can tell us what's the number one problem with rolling a joint.
Can I spoil that one?
Yeah, sure. What's the number one problem most people have rolling?
They're not rolling enough for everybody because I'm not putting my mouth on anything anybody else put their mouth on.
Yeah, chip in. This was in Colorado. He's rolling a joint and he's like, the problem is most people don't put enough weed in there. And he's like spilling shit. Like he doesn't matter. He's a grower. Like he's got all the weed in the world. He's like spilling nugs just falling on the ground. Like it doesn't matter. People kicking him away.
So all right, wait. Before we roll on, I gotta tell my favorite Chip abundant weed story, and then we can move on. But this is hilarious. So this is in Boulder, also totally legal. And we were at I don't think it was the Boulder Country Club, but it was a place like that. It was real fancy, and we're not fancy people.
Panera?
And the group of people no, it wasn't Panera. And the people that we with weren't especially fancy either. But this place was like courting the group as a place. Hey, could you want to meet here? And so they were.
Yeah, I know the group, and it's pretty funny to think about actually.
Right. So we were. It was just starting to rain, and And I'm like, hey, Johnny, let's walk to the dispensary because I don't know that we'll get another chance. We got activities all day. And, but it is just starting to rain. It's not the best idea. Johnny's a little resistant to it. But I want to do it. And Chip comes out and he's like, where are you guys going? And well, I'm going to the dispensary because, and this is my thing. Like there's plenty of weed around. I just don't want to ask for it. And that's stupid. And Johnny knows that's stupid. He's like, dude, just ask. And then so Johnny's explaining to Chip. He's like, he just doesn't want to ask anybody. So Chip goes, hold on. And he goes down into his duffel bag.
He's wearing cargo pants. So he's got a bunch of pockets.
Oh, is it in a pocket? That's even funnier.
Yeah, it's a bunch of pockets. And he pulls out like glass mason jars.
Yeah, he pulls out a mason jar full of it. Like there's got to be three. I don't even know. A ton of weed. And he tosses me the mason jar. He goes, here, now you don't have to ask anybody. And I couldn't fly with it. It's not like I could do anything with it other than
smoke it all.
There was way too much. I did end up giving it away to somebody.
All right, so let's move into the Story Studio podcast, sponsored by High Times Magazine. So why don't you explain this, Sean? Because the framing is you sort of pitch this.
Yeah. Okay. So Johnny and I are developing a pitch for a sitcom, and we're going to go next month to LA because June is sitcom season in Hollywood, and we've been talking about this project for I don't know about 6 months, even longer than that. No, 6 months. It's been 6 months. So we've been dabbling with this for about half a year, but it's pretty serious now. There's a pitch deck that's already made its way around. And what's interesting about this project, there's a few things. First, it didn't come from any existing IP. This is totally developed just for television. Secondly, it's one of those things where we can't tell you the details. I'm really sorry, because we're going to go pitch it next month. But it's not right after that. Whether we have a successful pitch or not, we're going to have our other partner on the show. We're going to tell you all about it. But right now, the reason I wanted to talk about it is because writing for television is fundamentally different than writing novels, obviously, even though there's a lot of stuff that's the same. And writing for sitcoms is even more specific. And there's just a lot of stuff that we've picked up as far as detailing our characters and figuring out kind of what studios are looking for, but also what people are looking for, what audiences are looking for, what makes a good lineup of characters. And, some of our touchstones that we've been using are more recent things like The Office and Parks and Rec, even a little like Always Sunny. But also just the history of sitcoms. Like we watched a lot of pilots. Our partner is kind of obsessed. He actually lives in Hollywood and is just really, really, he's been involved with a few TV shows before and is just kind of obsessed with golden age of NBC television, I'd say, like Cheers and Taxi, those shows. And
Soap on ABC. That was the best sitcom ever.
We watched a lot of pilots. So I think that we've, had a lot of really cool, Dave hasn't been on any of these conversations, but Dave likes TV. And I think Dave would actually really enjoy this project and enjoy a lot of the stuff that,
I could see some crazy madcap ideas coming from Dave on this.
Yeah. And it's different because it's
Ronald McDonald killing children in a fun house.
How fun would it be to write a really, really dark sitcom with Dave? How fun would that be?
Oh, that would be funny. And then he could tell his wife it was funny.
I mean, I'm thinking animated, like something really dark and inappropriate and animated would be wonderful.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
The new South Park.
So, what's one of the things that surprised you most about trying to work on this project, Johnny? And what's something that like, oh yeah, I knew that was obvious, but it's really interesting to see it in play? Because those are two kind of different things.
I'm speaking off the cuff here. I'm not really prepared to answer those questions particularly. What has surprised you, Sean? What has been?
Well, I was surprised by, because we were just throwing out funny character ideas. And I think that even from the beginning, we didn't have any bad character ideas. Like all the pitches that we had were really great. Let's call our friend Matt, just because I want something to call him.
Sure.
So what Matt would bring back is more organization to our ideas, and he would eliminate one of our characters and substitute it or change the dynamic of that character or the quirk of that character so that it worked better with other characters. And I guess that fits both categories, because of course characters have to fit.
Right. I mean, one of the things that he said, and I remember thinking this was interesting, was I don't remember what the goal here was, or whether it was to create a good specific episode idea or whatever it is. Maybe you can remember it. Is he said to have a situation. He actually repeated this just the other day, but he said it a while ago. Is to have some sort of a situation and give everybody an opinion about it.
Yes.
Remember that?
Yeah.
Right. So actually, I guess I didn't realize that he had mentioned it the other day, but it was something like, imagine that something needs to be remodeled, and everybody has their own. So, somebody's real meticulous and anal about it because it's not going to be done right. And somebody else feels that it needs to be done to, A++ standards, even though it's sort of a subpar place. And somebody else is obsessed with the mess it's going to create. And so you get to see their personalities reflected through the prism of the same thing.
I think Parks and Recreation does that well with Ron Swanson, that very sort of manly, like my dad kind of. Ron Swanson reminds me of my dad.
Well, that's actually interesting because Ron Swanson was a specific part of our conversation yesterday, and exactly that he has a very specific worldview, and that it's essentially he could just be the Dwight of the show and be a really pale imitation of that character, but instead he is definitely his own character, and his perspective adds a lot. And so the exercise that Matt gave us was really specific. It was go through our entire lineup and put everybody through this. That's exactly right. It was a remodeling. They're going to remodel this thing, and if everybody responds to it kind of the same way, or there's not a lot of fighting or differences of opinion, what's the problem, right? You don't actually have interesting people there.
I mean, ultimately the idea is to have conflict. That is something that that you really want. And so that was when we originally tossed out a character ideas, then we were looking at, and again, I have to be vague here, unfortunately. I do apologize. I know this is annoying. Is if you had various stations within a business, so in the office, it's, actually, that's not a great example, but Parks and Rec, there's, Leslie Knope is programs director or whatever. And Ron Swanson is, I don't know what he does. And April's the intern. And so, we started like that, who would be the funny person in this position? Who would be the funny person in this position? And, what we ended up starting to do was to say, well, okay, it's not enough to do that. Let's do that as a first round pass. But then how are they different? How are they going to interact? Where are the places where they can kind of butt heads? And then we did a second pass and said, well, let's change this. There were a few people where it was well, this person's going to be the perfectionist. And then well, wait, hold on. Maybe we have two people who are kind of perfectionists. So let's make this one this and this one controlling, which is different.
Yeah. Okay. So another way to say this is that all the characters had to have a reason for behaving like they were behaving. And the reason couldn't be because they're funny or because that's funny. Because on our first versions, that's what Johnny and I were focused on. It's going to be a funny show about funny people doing funny things. So here's the
because it's based on real funny people. That's maybe worth mentioning.
Right. This is something that we actually know the person that the show would be not based on. It's not. Can't really say based on so much as it's inspired by, but it is, a lot of it is based on. A lot of it will literally be true stuff. So it's like
the Goldbergs.
The Goldbergs, right? That's exactly where I was going. So it's like the Goldbergs, where clearly none of that stuff happened exactly like that, but there's a root or a seed of truth in all the episodes. So it is something like that, and we just wanted it to be as funny as possible because, that's the whole point of a show, is to laugh, right? And so we're just trying to be good at our jobs. Let's think of as many funny people in these situations as we possibly can. But sometimes restraint was actually funnier because you need people to have reasons for their behavior. So, for example, we had somebody who the funniest thing that they could do is to not have much of an opinion. And what they need to do is be really agreeable to one of the louder characters on the show and always tell them that their idea is super good, even when it's not, because they just kind of are a people pleaser. And that character themselves is not as funny, but they're going to be funny because of the way they interact with other people. And so if you've got, 9 characters, you don't want every single one of those characters to be really, really funny. That's so not the point. If 5 of them are really funny and 2 of them are, really great mirrors, and then 2 of them are foils, that's a way better setup.
Right. Like Stanley on The Office is not funny in and of himself 99% of the time. He's funny because he's reacting to Michael usually, or sometimes Dwight or somebody like that. Like that's what makes that character funny, is that he's just so above all of it.
Right. And yeah, Dave.
No, go ahead.
Dave. No. Hey, let's hear from everybody in the audience. More Dave.
He went off mute. I was all excited.
I thought I had something that I didn't, and then you asked me, and usually you don't, so you put me on the spot.
Oh wow! Well, that was a waste. Okay. Well, I think
Ashlyn and Neve are saying more Dave. So
everybody is saying more Dave. So
okay, I'll eat more.
How's your weight doing, dude?
Down to 274. So I hit 275, which was my milestone, and then I celebrated by eating, what was it, ice cream or donuts? And then I went to 276. Like, God damn it!
There was this great moment in our company Slack where Joel was like, "Well, now I weigh more than Dave."
I remember that.
I am noticing people that I always thought I was fatter than are starting to look fatter than me to me, and I'm like, oh, I like that.
Like Joel, he's so fat.
No, Joel, I never think of as fat.
No, that's a joke. Joel's like a brick shit house.
40, and he's built. So
yeah, Joel looks like the kind of guy who would make you piss yourself if you.
The kind of guy who could injure himself pulling a stump out of the ground. Fuck that.
Heard it could tear like wet cotton. Yeah. So tone is another thing that you really want to get, and not just in the jokes themselves, but kind of like the messaging, the feeling, the vibe that you want from the show in its totality. So one of the examples that we were using yesterday was the difference between the way Modern Family handles the same kind of thing and The Office. Now, I actually like Modern Family a lot. I don't think it's nearly as good as it used to be. I think its first 3 seasons were kind of golden. But whatever, it's still funny-ish. And
it hung in there better than the Goldbergs, which fell apart pretty quickly once he started.
For sure. Yeah, for sure. Season 10 of Modern Family is better than season 3 of the Goldbergs. Like, it just Goldberg started out strong and then just went but The Office is interesting because if you look at the trajectory of that show, wow, like it really did stay in there. The writing stayed good. The problem with the show was that the characters kind of fell apart and the situation kind of fell apart. Michael's not there anymore, blah, 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 blah. But the writing was always strong. And same with Modern Family. The writing, it has a hard time because characters grow up, situations change. But if you just look at the way that they were handling tone, the episodes end in pretty much the same way. So in Modern Family, they've got 21 minutes of shenanigans, and then the last 30 seconds is somebody, usually Phil, sitting on the couch looking at the camera and summing up everything that happened in the episode in really straightforward kind of like it's not that it's heavy-handed, it's just that it's obvious. They're basically telling you, here's what happened in the show and here's how you're supposed to feel about it. And The Office does the exact same thing, except they always have Michael delivering it to you, and it's always colossally wrong. Like he doesn't realize what just happened, what the episode is about, or how you're supposed to feel, and what your takeaway is supposed to be. And that in itself is hilarious because you still do get the takeaway. It still is there, but it's there in this surprisingly ironic way. And so you have to decide what kind of tone do you want? Do you want to make the audience work, or do you just want to give it to them? And I really liked having asked those questions. And even if you're not, Well, even if you're not talking about developing a sitcom and it's just characters in your own story, it's the same thing. Like when you end your book, do you want there to be questions that the reader is answering or asking or answering for themselves? Or do you want to kind of lead them down the path that you want?
I tend to like, I think America gets sitcoms wrong in one major way. They and maybe I don't know. I like the British style of uncomfortable humor. Like I love Fawlty Towers. I love the original Office. Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's not a British show, but it's very uncomfortable. It makes you feel like.
See, I hate uncomfortable shows.
Okay, and the thing is, I think American sitcoms they go for nostalgia and feel good, and it's a nice cozy blanket, and I think that serves a greater number of people than the kind of thing that I like. But I think if you are creating a sitcom, you need, at least in America, you need those memorable characters. You need someone that everybody can laugh at. You need someone that makes you feel good. I tend to look at it very cynically. But I mean, I drew a comic strip for 10 years. So
I actually want to develop a sitcom with Dave. I've never, ever thought of that before, other than thinking Dave would have fun with this. But he actually would be really, really fun to develop a sitcom with.
Yeah, I've had ideas for them in the past. And I did a comic strip for more than 10 years. And I've given a lot of thought to the structure of things and how in comic strips and sitcoms, basically nothing is supposed to change. Like you're saying, it's a constant. People should be able to tune in anytime. And there's part of that I hate, and there's part of it that I like. And I'm kind of torn in between the two. So I think something like Always Sunny is definitely not the typical American sitcom. It's not comfortable. They don't have a lot of change that I remember from the episodes I've seen.
No, they don't, but they still do a lot with what they have.
Right. I think it's less about change, because actually, so this is maybe worth talking about, is that in a long-running drama or a movie, you want a character to evolve and change. You want an arc for them. In sitcoms, you usually don't. So some of the things that really irritate me about some sitcom choices, I'll name two, and they shouldn't surprise longtime viewers at all.
Wait, can I guess? Well, it doesn't matter. Of course I know. Go ahead.
Right. So the two are Joey in season 8, Friends, something like that, where he fell in love with Rachel, because suddenly that's like, oh, okay, so Joey's not just eating pizza off the floor anymore. Suddenly he's now got a heart, which is weird. It's not.
Have you seen the pitch meeting for Friends?
No, but I was watching a bunch the other day, and really, I like the Space Jam one. That was good. So, and then the other is on How I Met Your Mother, when Barney and Robin hooked up, and that there was angst there. I just think it's the Barney character was so good, and Robin wouldn't go for a guy like Barney. That didn't make any sense. So you don't necessarily want growth for a lot of characters, but you usually there's one or two that you do. So in How I Met Your Mother, then Ted and Robin were supposed to have growth. In Friends, it was Ross and Rachel. But everyone else really is, especially a character like Joey, who's supposed to be just a foil. But I do like payoffs, which is setups and payoffs, which is different. So in The Office.
Oh wait, no. Never mind. I don't know where you're going.
In The Office, well, you can say yours next. In The Office, you start to hear about Michael's screenplay for like seasons and seasons before we finally get to Threat Level Midnight. And I feel like there was another one that there was a character, I don't know if it was in The Office or something, where they discovered he had a secret identity. Oh, it was in
a serial killer?
I think it was in Parks and Rec. Wasn't Nick Offerman's character like a lounge singer or something?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I like when there's, you just did the pitch meeting. Yeah.
I noticed that. I actually noticed that as I was doing it.
So we talked about having a character who just kind of has a secret, and there's something and nobody kind of knows what it is, but you hear mention of it. And then eventually, like in season 2, you find out what it is. And the example of this I saw recently, I actually mentioned this on the show.
It's funny because the example that you're using, I was actually thinking of Ron Swanson and his secret while we were talking about that.
Right. And that's the one I couldn't remember what it was, but it was sitcom I'm Sorry, which I mentioned as a something cool a while ago. Yeah, where they actually did, and I actually haven't seen this before, and I apologize if you guys have heard this already, but I thought this was interesting.
It's one they set it up in the pilot and don't answer it. Well, they touch it a couple of times, but they actually give you a full arc by
there are two, and I won't in the pilot. You see Andrea Savage's neighbor comes out and he points down his legs and he goes, "Shorts," and then she's like, "Yeah, you're wearing shorts," and she doesn't know what to do with it. And then the other thing is she's in a coffee shop and there's this blind guy and he's looking for the restroom and he's asking this woman, "Can you help me find the restroom? Can you help me? And she just doesn't even look up. She ignores him. And so Andrea Savage and her writing partner, I guess her name's Andrea in the show, start calling this person like she's a garbage person. Like, why would you ignore the blind guy? And those two things pay off toward the end of the season in a way I kind of haven't seen before, but I like that. Setups and payoffs is different from...
Yeah, they treat the joke, because in sitcoms, usually a joke...
Oh, there's a third, the woman biting the dick. Remember how that pays off?
Oh, yeah.
Her favorite photo.
Right. So in a normal sitcom...
So happy.
You've got a joke that it has to fly and land in the same episode, because who has the attention span to remember a joke that was set up in episode 1? But the show is ballsy. The show is like Curb Your Enthusiasm, except awesome.
Which show is this?
It's called I'm Sorry. But
yeah, it's really funny.
The difference between it and Curb Your Enthusiasm, it is the same setup. Basically, you've got a comedy writer who is constantly putting themselves in situations where...
She's a lot more likable than Larry David.
She's so much more likable than Larry David. And their marriage is a lot more likable than Larry's marriage. Like, Larry's...
Oh, yeah, I really like their marriage.
Yeah, I love their marriage. And I don't like Larry's marriage. Like, he doesn't respect his wife. He's just kind of a dick. So I don't enjoy spending time with him, even if it's only 30 minutes. Where Andrea and her husband, like, I just want to hang out with them. Like, I want
the show we're watching right now is Friends from College, and Robin's like, I don't like any of these people. I'm like, oh, they'll grow on you.
That's
the problem with that show for sure. And it's not getting a third season.
I don't know. I like it. I think it's funny.
I didn't really like the first season. I liked the second season, but there's not going to be a third.
That was the problem with King of Queens for me. I thought, in the beginning it was, I know it has a lot of people hated the show all the time, but I think in the beginning it was a decent show. I liked it. It was, kind of like Everybody Loves Raymond, a little the same sort of feel. But as the show went on, the characters became very hateful. They would just do very mean things. It's like they ran out of funny ideas and they just made their characters meaner over time, and it lost the charm that made me overlook the things that it lacked in the beginning. And I really hated the show at the end. I truly hated the show, and I hate watched it.
Well, that's
I hate watching shows.
That's actually interesting, because I hadn't thought of this as kind of a lesson, but there is one. So I just mentioned Friends from College, which I think is really funny, but and I'm not far enough in, so don't spoil this for me. But there's
Are you on season 1 or 2?
1, and we're only maybe halfway through it. Okay. So there's a couple of there's a few married couples, and there's one. Kobe Smulders is the woman, and I actually don't know the guy's name. His name on the show is Ethan. And they're married. This is in the pilot, so this isn't a spoiler, and I think it's the first thing you see in the pilot. But he's cheating with another one of their friends. I forget her name. And so what I can't tell is they're almost setting it up like there's a romance between the two people who are cheating. Like that's set up as almost a romantic plot. Like, will they stay together? And I'm like, okay, I have a fundamental problem with that, because it's not like they made his wife like unpleasant or like she's causing problems for him or anything that might help you excuse that behavior in some way. So it's just, even though I think it's funny, I have to get over to the fact that the show seems to be so far taking the side of the affair, which I have a problem with. So, but that's interesting. Like, there's a lesson
watching. Like, that show does have an interesting perspective, and I do like the cast. I like the actors more than the characters they're playing.
That episode where they're brainstorming the YA book and they just keep taking more and more drugs is fantastic.
I don't even remember that, but I
Felix keeps saying, I have surgery in the morning. And so they go out to the park and they're like,
oh, yeah, I do remember that. I agree. I had a fundamental problem with that show, and I don't even remember why. I did not enjoy season 1 enough to watch season 2. I don't even know why we watched season 2, other than we probably just watched something really, really violent and needed something that was not to counteract it. But I did think the second season was a lot better, but I had the same problem as you, Johnny. It actually kept me from enjoying it.
It's not that they're having an affair. It's that they seem to be glamorizing the affair. It's like the writers are taking the side of the affair. It's not that it's occurring. That's the problem. For
they are. It felt like writers who are trying to justify something.
Right.
You know, and I don't know. I couldn't really get into it like I wanted to.
Well, so let's talk about some other kind of lessons. This is something that I remember discussing a little bit yesterday, and I actually don't remember how we use this as a lesson, but I remember noticing it, and it was an interesting consideration, is how strong your supporting characters are, i.e. could they support a show on their own? So this discussion we had yesterday is what was the comparison? So like Stanley in The Office, Stanley can't support a show. He's only a good foil. But meanwhile, there's in Parks and Rec, there is a show that centers on Jerry, who's a nothing character, because you discover that he's got, like, Christy Brinkley's his wife and his daughters are all super beautiful.
Would you at least give the spinoff of Jerry's Family a try compared to the spinoff Stanley, right? If you were going to watch a new show,
yes, but that's a terrible comparison because I wouldn't want to watch Jerry's Family either.
I think I might give that a try. I think that could be really funny. I think the magic that we're trying to unearth here is the idea that every character is really important. And if you've got a character that seems like they're just minor and they're insignificant, they're not that funny on their own, but they make the rest of the show better by their presence, then they're great. So like Mr. Roper, right? Mr. Roper was not like an amazing character or anything, but every time
Mr. Roper, Mr. Farley, it was Don Knotts. Is that Mr. Farley?
Yeah. Mr. Farley was Don Knotts. Yeah, okay. Mr. Roper was the OG. Who would always do that with his little fingers, and he was a funny character, but he was only funny because of what he would bring out of John Ritter or the situation.
I like when Mr. Furley would come in and he'd hear them and he'd always think they were having sex and they were doing something innocuous like putting up a shower curtain.
Wait. Actually, I didn't realize this until I just said that, but there was a spinoff called The Ropers, right?
Yes.
Okay, was that any good? I actually remember seeing it. I think.
Yeah, and I think I had Jeffrey Tambor in it.
Yes, it did.
Yeah.
It did. That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah, I actually did like it. I mean, I was like 11 at the time, but I don't know. Yeah, so.
Well, spinoffs are interesting because Friends spinning off Joey versus, Cheers spinning off Frasier. Like there's a lesson there. Joey. I actually hadn't thought of that until I said it. What do you think is the reason? I mean, obviously, other than good writing,
has more depth as a character. I mean, he just does. Joey's job was never to have depth. He was the.
But if episodes had been the Joey spinoff, then it works. Probably because it subverts expectations.
Yes, right. Because it's a different thing. And really, for those of you who haven't seen episodes, it's a show on Showtime where
it's based on a British show.
Yeah.
Matt LeBlanc plays Matt LeBlanc post Joey.
But it works because he's not Joey. He's an asshole.
Yes, and it is funny. Like it's not the best show ever, but it really is the show that Joey should have been. Because if they had done that, they had done something like that, I think it could have worked. But they didn't. They
tried to make Joey zany, if I remember right. I don't remember the show that well, but I remember, think about it, because you start with Joey's a slapstick character. And so you take a slapstick character, you're going to make a slapstick sitcom. And I think that was the problem.
Right, because he's way more interesting because if you think about Joey's best moments, they're not where
tiny. They're things like, there's the pizza, that's where I keep the napkin.
But not even comedic. If you think about the value that he added to the show and to the Friends, it really wasn't his comedic moments. I mean, it was, of course, but it was also a lot of times when they were a mirror to him, or he was a mirror to them. So Like when Monica wants to adopt a baby and she's, deciding, and he talks about Hoyt and, like he talks her out of out of all the people there, he's the one least capable of having a cogent, logical, discussion about this. And yet he's the one to change her mind. And they actually have that a whole bunch of times throughout the show where there's a moment of clarity that he's the one bringing to the friend group, which you don't really expect from him. And the Joey show had none of that. It was only focused on who he is as this like wallpapery, slapsticky character.
Well, you're taking a character who was by his very nature and worth a background character, and he has to be the foreground character. Maybe that's why episodes work. Joey is not. Matt LeBlanc is not the star.
No, the
of episodes
of the show that he has to be in are the stars.
Right. What about the idea, maybe this would be a good one to close up on. So one of the things we were looking at when we were looking at like what would be a good way to get conflict in, basically this is basically a workplace comedy, which Parks and Rec and The Office obviously are, is the idea of multiple hands on the wheel. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? We were trying to figure out like how do you get multiple hands on the wheel steering the organization?
Well, I think you want conflict whenever you want. I mean, wherever you could possibly have it. And the idea of different people kind of fighting for their spot. I mean, you saw that in The Office a lot. And it was done in stupid ways, but it was always funny. Like, so the whole thing with assistant to the regional manager and assistant regional manager, right? It's stupid, that one little word, but that's a gag that runs for years, and it works because when you have a workplace comedy, the vernacular, the jargon, like the things that are important to the people in that world are just different and they're specific, right? So if it's like, let's say your workplace comedy takes place in a mechanic's shop, it may be like, that's always dripping oil, and it becomes a very, that becomes territorial. I guess that's it. Workplace comedy, you have different territories, and people are in charge of things or not in charge of things. And things that aren't important to us looking from the outside in are extremely important to the people living in that situation. And so they can dig their heels in and just feel really passionate and allegiant to a certain perspective that seems ridiculous. And that can be just a really ripe area for conflict and comedy.
Any closing thoughts, Dave?
Nah.
Dave, real quick. Okay, we've got 2 minutes. Pitch us on a sitcom. Pitch us on what would be the perfect Dave sitcom.
No, I'm not giving my ideas away. Fuck that.
Oh, wow. All right.
I have definitive ideas of what I would like to do. So.
Okay, will you tell us your sitcom idea off the air?
Sometime.
I don't think he really has a sitcom ready to go. What do you think, honey?
I'm not ready to go. No.
But he's hinging on the definition of calm. Like, well, I think it's funny, but would anybody else? How to Win Your Marriage would make an awesome sitcom from Ashland. Yes, I totally
agree. Like, that's a great title. Dave, if we got
it's basically King of Queens again.
Yeah, Dave, if we got somebody to develop How to Win Your Marriage with you/us, would you do it?
I don't know that style of sitcom is in fashion anymore. You just come off as an asshole woman hater. I mean, really, that's
no, but you'd have to come up with a twist of some sort.
Right, you're clearly the bad guy, though. Do you not understand that? Do you not understand?
It's not instructional.
Yeah, do you not understand the actual hook of the show?
No. You don't. I think there's a sensitivity in modern life that makes some of the sitcoms you would have done like 10, 15 years ago just seem boorish. And
well, yes, but you have to take that into account. I mean, that becomes part of the writing. We're doing that. Like our character lineup is we're very much trying to make sure that it's modern and it's,
Ashland said Dave just called himself an asshole woman hater.
Yes.
No, fuck you.
It can be handled by the reaction too. So one of the things that I thought was really funny about I'm Sorry is the way that they raised several, 5, 6 really inappropriate topics as major things, but the way the characters react to it is all you need to know. So it's like something that could have been handled badly, and they're just like, but the way they react to it is like, well, clearly this is fucked up, right?
Yeah, I actually disagree. I think that in the world today, first of all, there's so much content needed, right? There just is. Like,
I don't know about that. I feel like there's too much content, not enough time to watch it all.
That's an accurate
I think
statement.
we're in a bubble that's gonna burst.
No way, dude. It's like, seriously, we're just getting started, right? Like, if you look at Disney Plus, this is actually a really interesting conversation. So Disney Plus is about to drop. Right, and we've got Netflix, and anybody looking at the streaming wars knows that those are the two heavy hitters.
I'm not buying any more goddamn things. I'm done.
But that's you, right? Netflix versus Disney Plus, and you've got a quality versus quantity arms race there. And with Disney Plus, they only have 20%. They'll launch with everything Disney's ever done, everything Fox has. Marvel, National Geographic, Pixar, LucasArts, whatever. They've got all of that content. 5,000 episodes of Disney Channel shows. And they're going to have 20% of what Netflix has. So Netflix has, obviously the quantity. Disney Plus has the quality. You've got AT&T. You've got all these other companies that are ready for streaming. Apple Plus or Apple TV Plus.
Oh, nobody's going to be watching that.
Yeah, dude, there's so much content, and people are going to need the nature of content has changed. It is subscription. It's not advertising. So there is a home for any kind of content. The question is, how do you build that out so that people are energized and excited about it? And that just comes down to voice. A show like How to Win Your Marriage could absolutely find a home, but it needs the right tone. And you're right. If it seems like something that should star Andrew Dice Clay, it's never going to get picked up, and it's going to be terrible. But if it...
For like 6 or 7 reasons there, you don't even need to just stop.
But there is a version of that show that is hilarious and that people will really enjoy and love to talk about.
Do you remember when Andrew Dice Clay was hot and that statement would still be accurate?
Yeah, remember Ford Fairlane, The Adventures of Ford Fairlane?
Yes, you do.
I am willing to change my mind on Apple once I actually learn what they have. They really haven't been too clear on it yet, but maybe it's just early going.
Very secretive.
They are the most.
But I am curious, like, I foresee a situation where, like, the appeal of all these things was, cord cutting, and why pay like over $100 a month for cable? You just buy like a couple of these streaming services. But I think now that you have all of these different ones competing and grabbing all their own shows back, Netflix is going to be spending so much goddamn money to keep up. So I think you're going to have a situation where people will have to choose. You're like, okay, well, this month I'll do Netflix, next month I'll do Hulu. I don't know if you'll have the constant flow of. I think it's going to be lots of ups and downs. I'm curious how it's all going to shake.
Yeah,
out.
this is
that's a whole other fucking
episode.
show.
Yeah, we should do an episode on this because it is interesting, and we all have a lot of thoughts, and it's very interesting to people who are telling stories. I mean, this is our future.
So let's close with, I'll just mention again that if you want reminders of the live show, sterlingandstone.net/live show. And I also should have mentioned that we talked about the Stone Table imprint. That's our nonfiction imprint. It's what used to be called the Smarter Artist. People have asked how to get on that list because we're launching a big collection called the Smarter Artist Locker, which may be out by the time this airs. I'm not sure. So anyway, the list for that is sterlingandstone.net/Stone Table, because Stone Table is the new name of the imprint. For that list, and you can find about new releases, which would be coming about once a month or every 3 weeks?
Every 4 weeks.
Every 4 weeks. So lots of great stuff coming there. So I guess that's it. And thanks y'all for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you.